Wow, the upperclassmen of the Kimberly Academy seem to have some very interesting hobbies. But yes, the second episode of Reign of the Seven Spellblades was a really excellent episode. I think mainly around the idea that it's sort of playing into my hopes for the show, which is actually have an academy where people actually do academy stuff, and it kind of builds on the world itself and just has some really great character moments themselves. And so far, like with this episode, every sort of misgiving I had with the first episode of certain characters not having enough given to them, definitely had with the second episode. We really started getting into really how kind-hearted Michelle was, and additionally, yes, technically getting more into why Katie is seemingly not wanting to harm any kind of monsters. I think my only real misgiving I have right now is the ending, which I'm sure they'll probably explain with the next episode, but I just don't want to already get into this whole thing where everybody's at each other's throat for some reason. Like, they're at this academy, this is where they train, but there seems to be a bunch of people that are crazy. My assumption is that, yes, you might have that aspect of certain families don't like other families, so maybe, because the moment that Oliver heard her name, he was immediately like, oh, it's Ophelia Salvador? He was getting into the fact that he read her thesis, but it could also be an aspect of this chick's crazy. Kind of gives that indication, the idea that she's like, oh, you read my thesis? Like, yeah, it was crazy, and it made me sick. He knows this chick's crazy. But the question mark is like, why is she there? Again, it could be that slow descent into madness. That could be the explanation of it. Ophelia hasn't graduated yet, so she could be one of the many that, over time, has lost herself to spells. And she might just be there, and she's crazy, and she's gonna do crazy stuff. But we'll see. But again, I'm already like that aspect of like, okay, I know what's going to happen here is they're going to fight off these two. They're going to get out of there and nothing will happen. Even though they should literally be kicked out of the school for what is happening here. It won't. They never have any sort of repercussions. And you always wonder why nothing ever happens to this kind of stuff, even though there's so much emphasis put on not harming each other. Specifically on this episode, they talk about the idea that this is how duels are done. If you do it any other way, harsh punishments. But yet, nothing will happen here. We'll see, though. But yeah, cool episode, like I said, just doing a really good job of kind of sprinkling through all the different classes they have, getting a nice explanation as to why they're spellblades, why do they use swords, they're mages, why don't they use wands? Even though you do have technically a segment where it starts to kind of counter that, having a spellblade class explaining how, yes, at some point, mages realized, crap, when we're close up to people, we die. Having this very famous mage lose to a person that had no magic just because they got into close range. So they started teaching themselves to use swords so they can protect themselves. And like I said, having another class where you have this other person that's like, no, all we need is our wand. Just utilize it. Use nothing but your magic. And then she creates a bunch of familiars, which yes, technically is a good way of sort of countering that aspect of being in melee range, is to have tons of familiars. It's a really cool way of kind of building up the world while having each one of these little classes to do that with. And additionally, having the class where they're pretty much exploiting creatures, which is terrible for Katie, but it sort of shows how mages themselves have progressed as far as they've had, but at what cost? There is still an element of any sort of society like this, no matter how much they've advanced, always has something that is harmed by their progression. And in this case, it is creatures. Anything that is non-human, as Katie puts it, will be exploited by magic. That's just an unfortunate thing. They will find some way to use it as a resource. And it kind of shows how magic itself sort of affects creatures and affects things around it. Yes, supplying it with magic allows it to produce silk, it creates a cocoon, but if you provide too much, it becomes a monster, basically, and then it has to be killed. But yes, within each one of those classes, we of course had some really good character moments, and I'll get to Katie in a minute, even though I want to jump right into it. The beginning segment is a juicy bit. We're already hitting on an obvious story beat that will eventually come up, is the idea that yes, those that have magic will obviously look down to those that don't. Ordinaries, as they call them. This is literally in every Magic Academy story. I mean, irregular at Magic High becomes right into my mind, the idea of the Blooms and the others. So we'll see where that goes. But then, of course, the bigger thing here is that they want to have two people duel. And so Nanaho obviously is like, me, big me, big me. To which Andrews, I hate that name, Andrews decides to speak up. He wants to show himself to Nanaho because she's super strong and he wants to put her down. Was very surprised to see Oliver step up the way he did. You usually don't get a main character that way. Typically with your main characters, they usually kind of stand to the side and go, oh, well, I wish this wasn't happening, and they don't do anything. No, Oliver's pretty quick to kind of just snap right back. Andrew's like, oh, well, it would have been best if you just wait by and let the teachers handle it. And he's like, oh, so you're the type that just stands by while your fellow students get smashed. But no, Shella was great, though. I'm already getting this kind of sense that she's going to be definitely the big sis type that I absolutely love. The one that's just willing to kind of step up, handle a situation, help anybody around her. She doesn't really kind of fit that, prissy and rich type girl. She really does have a heart in there. So, of course, she steps up to kind of diffuse the situation. But then we have the duel, which, my gosh, brings up a massive amount of question marks. It's a duel between Oliver and Nanao. Really cool they have kind of this spell, this non-lethal spell, which I thought was kind of dumb because how would anybody ever beat somebody if they could just cast a non-lethal spell on the other person? But it's seemingly showing that you can technically break it. Like they subconsciously or consciously broke it at some point. So it's not something that you cast on somebody and they're completely useless. But during their duel itself, it's obvious that Nanao gets really excited about the fight. It was funny because at first she's like, I'm just going to take it easy on her because she doesn't know how to use magic. Oh, wait, I can't do that because my line is like, no, dude, she's from the battlefield. She's fought a bunch. But as they're fighting, it seems like Nanao gets really super excited. And then at some point, she starts to cry. She says something effective here. And what I'm guessing sort of happens here is he's constantly thinking about how many people she's killed. How many people has this blade killed? How is it that this girl has stained her hands so much? I think her crying is her realizing that, one, she finally has somebody that is able to stand toe-to-toe with her. But additionally, I think she's trying to look for a place to die. I think her story is going to be where she feels all the weight of all the lives she has taken, and I think she is looking for somebody to sort of end her. So it almost felt like she was wanting that. And he was going to give it to her. He wanted to make her stop crying, and thus turned himself to kill. But then afterwards, he realizes, what the hell was I thinking? What was I going to do? Again, I think she wants to die. He was going to give her that. That last blow was going to be one of them dying. And in the end, he was really shooken by it. Even afterwards, when she's like, oh, that was so great. Let's duel again without all the restrictions. With real blades. Let's do it. And he's like, no, I don't want to do that. I'll never do that. I don't want to kill her, and I don't want her to kill me. Nanao is the mindset of somebody who has been through countless battles. And thus, this is just a normal thing to her. She thinks this is normal. And in his eyes, is like, no, that's not normal. That's not a normal way to think. So it's presenting an interesting concept here. I have to admit that a lot of stories, when they handle a situation, always ends up being so dumb in how it's kind of resolved, or at least just kind of shrug. So hopefully, this one pulls it off, because it is technically an interesting concept, just always poorly handled. But yeah, I like the fact that Shella was like, so how many of our attacks were you going to do all to deflect? And he's like, didn't want to say anything. But yeah, the other big segment here, of course, was Katie and her struggle with the whole test that they have to go through in order to create the cocoons. Obviously, the terror of her seeing them just mistreating the animals, which is expected. But additionally, her desire to not fail a single one of those cocoons. And additionally, I think they said that you only had to get 5. She was trying to do all of them because she was afraid of not doing some of them, that somebody else would do them and kill them. So she decided to do them all. And of course, getting distracted and unfortunately it going off and not wanting to kill it, and everybody else having to step in, which was dumb because the teacher got mad at them for killing the creature as it was attacking Katie. And she said, you guys get scored down because you assisted. And I'm like, Shella was going around helping everybody. Like, Shella was cool. She was going around helping Nano, and she gave some tips to Guy, and yeah, technically helped there. But it was kind of dumb. But the scene after it was really cool because, yes, it technically gives a perspective of Katie. She lived in a place where they had lots of animals and lots of creatures, and she even had a friend that was a troll. She loved them. But I like how Oliver puts it, and the idea that it's like you were this angel amongst other angels, and at some point you came down to Earth, and now you're seeing the nastiness of our world. You can keep being that angel, and I will respect you for that. But you might want to shed that. I like that it's that idea of him not judging her. He's saying that's great, but if you want to survive here, you might want to shed that. Either way, he's going to respect her. But it's sort of giving her a hint that it's going to get worse. Like, you've only seen the tip of this. This society exploits animals, exploits these creatures. You're going to have to see that. You're going to have to look at it with your eyes. Interesting that it doesn't really give a perspective of you can change that. He's not giving her this option that's going to make it fix. But at least he's acknowledging who she is, what she could be. And yes, ultimately added her to his harem. Katie's sweet, though. She's super sweet. She's too pure for this, unfortunately, dire society. But yeah, the last part of it is Pete saying that he forgot his book. I totally thought this was going to be bullies. Like, because the moment that he said that, Oliver and Chella was like, yeah, we're coming too. And I was like, what, is it going to be bullies? Like, they're assuming that the guys took his book. But no, it was actually true. Apparently, when night sets, this place gets kind of consumed by this labyrinth underneath it. Like, it kind of melds into it. And sure enough, they get trapped inside of a labyrinth. Apparently, upperclassmen and teachers wander the halls so that they can guide the students back. But apparently, the worst upperclassmen were in that hall at the time. So, yeah, now they have crazy seductress chick pumping out an aphrodisiac in the air or something like that, and I don't know, one of his friends that doesn't want them to leave. I don't know. Like I said, it's gonna go down that route of like, is it because she's slowly losing her mind to the spells? Is it because she just hates other people? She likes to experiment. But the big question is why is this person still around here? They're obviously harming other students. Are they just doing it without anybody knowing? What's the deal? And will there be repercussions for them doing this? I don't know. I hope there is, because otherwise this kind of stuff really does bug me. The whole random battles within the school that never seem to get any repercussions for it, besides sometimes a bad guy getting kicked out of the school. But you would think that even the thought of getting kicked out of the school, you would never do it unless the spell's messing with you. But we'll see. Really cool episode. Really interested to see how they develop Nanao, if they actually pull that off really well. Really loving Shella so far. Katie's a sweetheart. Pete seems okay. We'll see how his whole get bullied by the magical users goes. That could also sometimes be very typical and not really do much. But yeah, with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, make sure to hit that like button down below. Comment, let me know what's thought of the episode. Additionally, if you're new to the channel, make sure that subscribe button so you get all my content. I do news, reviews, first impressions, top list. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Probably will be doing an episode-by-episode impressions of this show for this season. Additionally, if you like this content and you want to support more, I have a Patreon link, tips link, super thanks, and membership button down below. I greatly appreciate everybody does, and y'all take care.